I worked for an international NGO for a while, and after that, I went to IUPUI, and I was an academic advisor and professor at IUPUI. And I still
I think,
teach adjunct a little bit, but
are
I
they
was there.
disbanding now, IUPUI?
Huh?
Aren't they like splitting up again, IUPUI?
Yes,
Yeah.
there's like a big divorce.
Yeah. My Bible college did that too. They're like not a
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
anymore.
no, I know. It's going to be IUI and then I don't know what's going to happen because I still teach with the School of Engineering, which
Oh,
is technically a Purdue school. I'm not an engineer, full disclosure. It's a
okay.
leadership class.
I will not be doing any engineering for
Don't
you.
ask me engineering questions. That's not my wheelhouse. Yeah, so I don't know what'll happen with that, but super weird. But yeah, I was there for 3 years. And then we found out we were going to have a baby, and we're in the middle of COVID, and it was just kind of a perfect storm of like needing to make a change for myself and our family, wanting something more flexible, and real estate had been in the back of my mind for a long time. And I had some informational interviews with different brokerages around the city. I chatted with my parents' realtor at the time, Amy Spillman, and she was great and super informative. Because getting into real estate also felt very um, tough to figure out. Like, where do you start? What is the process? So I needed people to help me demystify the process of becoming a realtor too, because it was like, well, do I sign on with a brokerage? Do I do a course? What course? Because there's like a million options. There's a lot of ways that you can get started. It just depends on with who and who you're talking to. And
Right.
yeah, so I started talking with brokerages and did my licensing course as a new mom. So I started that when Henry was nearly like just very newly born. And a lot of people, it takes like maybe a month or two. It took me 9 months to complete the licensing course because I had a newborn and I was
Yeah,
like, this
baby.
is really easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't. It was
Babies
a
make
lot of
everything
like,
feel like you're like slogging through a pool. It's like you
oh
went from
my
walking normal
gosh.
to walking in 6 feet of water.
Yeah. And my managing broker, Jen, is like so wonderful. And she would check in with me every so often. And I was like, I'm only 17% done with the course. I'm only 23% done with the course. And I just remember thinking, like, it's going to feel so good when I'm at like 99%. But that day, like, it just feels so far off. And now I've actually been doing it for a year and a half. And that time
Right.
feels really long ago. So, yeah, even if it's hard to get started, just get started.
So a year and a half total, or a year and a half plus the 9 months of training
A year and a half as a licensed
as
realtor.
licensed. Yeah.
Actually, just under. It'll be a year and a half in. No, it is a year and a half. Okay, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So now some time for humble brag. So 2022, right? Rookie of the year finalist.
Yes.
So kicking lots of butt in 22, and then I think was it January? You were the listing leader for the
Yeah.
office.
So January was sales leader, and then also May. And then in May, I had my first $1 million month.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So killing it. Yeah. Realtors who rock. I said
It's
humble brag, but you can just actually brag. There's no need for
yeah.
humility. Obviously, yes. So. And you mentioned a baby, so we have little
Yep.
Henry, and
Little
so
Henry.
he's year and a half. Well, he's two now, or
He'll be 2.5 in August.
two and a
Yep.
half.
So
No,
basically his whole first year, for the most part, I was working on the licensing course. So squeezing it in during naps and when he went to bed and just kind
around
of fitting it
teaching,
in.
and yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like reading it on my phone and
Uh, oh my god.
it was a lot.
So, and then you're with Century 21. So would
Mhm.
you? It was through your conversations with Amy then that sort of led you to that particular brokerage.
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah, I connected with Amy and we were living on the east side downtown at the time. And so she was like, your office would be the downtown office. So I'll connect you with Jen Short, who's the sales manager for that office. And just in meeting with her and her consistency and like checking in with me and seeing how things were going, I was really encouraged by that. I also knew that like I was brand new to this field. I did not have any adjacent experience. I do have like transferable skills, but like I didn't know anything about real estate other than through my own experiences. So I wanted to be with a brokerage that had a really robust education program. I didn't want to be like just kind of tossed in, like,
Sure.
okay, figure it out. Yeah. So I knew I needed that mentorship and that leadership and that education component. Because if I was going to do it, I really wanted to do it well. Um, and Century 21 just felt like a really good fit for
That's
that
awesome.
and seemed to offer all of those things.
I love that you said the transferable skills. That's something I think about every new realtor I meet. I think
Hmm.
it's like no matter what industry you came from before, there's something
Yeah,
that you can use from that previous job
absolutely.
experience. Like, and
Absolutely.
there are soft skills that you kind of need to have and
Hmm.
develop to some extent. Just being an entrepreneur, being a business,
Yeah.
like a business owner mindset. But
Hmm.
yeah, you could come from any other industry and you'll find there's something
Yeah.
there that's helping you. And because realtors are counselors and realtors
Yeah.
are teachers and realtors are helping you buy a first home. They're educating and they're
Yeah.
soothing and they're
Uh-huh.
managing and they're spinning lots of plates. I mean, there's just so many. You guys are like you're the quarterback, right? Of that whole
Yeah.
transaction.
Marriage therapists,
Marriage therapist, hopefully not divorce attorney. We're not
Exactly.
managing that.
Exactly.
So what you already mentioned this year you've accomplished your first $1 million month in May. So what has been in the year and a half that you've been doing it? What's been your favorite transaction so far?
Hmm.
Real
I
Sophie's choice
had
question.
it's totally biased, but we ended up moving in the fall. Um, so I was able
I recall
to,
that.
yeah, yeah, you're our lender. Um, I was able to sell our old house and buy our current house. I was able to do our own transactions for us. And that was really, really special to like represent my husband and I on the purchase of this home for our family. And, a lot more goes into it than I realized. It was really interesting to be the realtor and the buyer and the seller and the spouse of a buyer and seller all at the same time.
I'll bet that was that like would you say that was kind of an empowering experience
Yeah.
for where you were
Yeah,
at?
it was yeah, it was really great.
I just
Because it felt
imagine you
like
like finishing the purchase and like opening the door, kicking the door, and be like, "I did all of
I
this. None of this
did
would happen without me."
it. It was really, really cool, especially listing our old house. We had done so much work on that house and really not brought it back to life because it had a life before we were there, but like polished her up quite a bit. So
Give it a new life.
being able
Yeah.
to like list that house and kind of showcase the things that we had done while we were there was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
being able to like run your own comps and like know
Right.
no one has more direct knowledge than you of the work that went into
Right.
that house and the
Exactly.
payoff as a result. And
Uh-huh. And
yeah,
it appraised the buyer's agent when it appraised it appraised like spot on, and she was like A plus job like coming up with that price. And I was like, oh, because we felt like we overshot it a little bit, or we wanted not overshot, but we were like,
well,
this
hopeful.
feels
Yeah,
like a kind of a crazy number. But but I
so
mean, like, I think when it's your own personal property, obviously that changes things. There's like more emotions involved in that too. And I
sure.
always want to be judicious as a realtor and realistic. And so, yeah, a
Good
lot of
word.
things went into it, but it was cool.
Judicious. Good word. Good
Yeah.
word. Well, that's one thing, and one thing that's impressed me. There are certain realtors. I love meeting with new realtors. I go to events where new realtors are, and I like presenting myself as a resource for those folks. And I know a lot of them aren't going to last their first year, but there
Mm,
are realtors who you meet who are just in their first 3 or 4 or 6 months, and they have an air of they've been doing this their whole life, and it's like you almost get this. It's like, were they made to do this? Was this a calling to them? Was
Yeah.
this their vocation? Like, and that you gave me that vibe early on, and it's only been affirmed by some of the other. We've done a couple of deals now since
Hey.
you've been a realtor,
Yeah.
and the listing side's always like, oh my, Rachel's awesome. You communicate, you answer your phone. It's like there are things you think are basics to do,
Yeah.
but you and I
Yeah.
worked on your first transaction, and there was a
Yeah.
realtor involved that was not.
Yes.
We've seen both sides of the spectrum on that.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Absolutely. What's the on the flip side? What's been the least favorite transaction that you've had to do?
Um, I had a transaction with some friends of mine that it was a one transaction that was actually like multiple transactions. And they were lovely and the most patient, gracious, creative people that I could ever imagine being in that situation. But they sold their house and moved to Indy. And before their home out of the city sold, they were looking here. So we had an offer in on a house that was a handyman special. Uh,
That was
and we are
nice.
like, okay, what does that mean? And I reached out to the agent and I was like, is he gonna, because it wasn't being sold as is. And I was like, is he going to do some repairs? And he was like, yeah, he's totally willing to do repairs that are not like obvious when you do the walkthrough. So there's like a hole in the wall in the bathroom. And it was like, he's not going to repair that because they can see it and they know what they're getting into. There was a lot going on in the house. And we submitted our inspection response. And the seller was like, nope, I'm not doing a single thing. We'll just like release the deal. And meanwhile, my clients are like about to close on the sale of their home out of town. So like we gotta go somewhere. Um, so that deal mutually released, and then we found another place for them. So meanwhile, they're like, we'll stay with some friends, we'll stay on some couches because we sold our house and don't have possession of it anymore. And they had some pets too, which made it even harder.
Mm.
So we found another house that seemed really cool. And then in the process, there was like a title issue, and they said it was going to take like 3 months to clear up. And so they're like needing to be in somewhere immediately. Well, the house was vacant, so we figured out a situation where they could rent it until they were able to purchase it until the title issue got cleared up. Well, there were a bunch of things that were supposed to be done on the inspection before they moved in that were not done when they moved in.
Mm.
And they were like, we don't want to rent this. We don't even want to buy it. Get out of here. And like, they were like, had their car full of things to move in. And it was just kind of a rough situation with that house. I think some things came to light when they were there to move in that it was like maybe not what they were hoping for. So we found them an Airbnb so they could go to the Airbnb for the next week. And then we eventually found a place in Windsor Park that was like perfect for them, like historic home. They've been renovating it. Our offer got accepted like 30 minutes after we submitted it because we were right under the deadline for submitting them. And they like put their best foot forward after being quasi homeless for 2 months. And we were
Awesome.
able to get that house, yeah, and went through inspections. Everything was good. We had a normal close, and they are like moved in and loving the house now. But
Yeah.
they were just, I felt so terrible for everything that they went through during that process. And there
Yeah.
were so many things that were out of their control that they were like, we're just going with it. We're going with everything we can. And they didn't complain. They were so sweet about the whole thing. And yeah.
I imagine it happens a little bit on the lending side, but probably more on the realtor side. You get so emotionally, I wouldn't say attached to the people, but you're involved
Yeah.
in the process. And
Yeah.
yes, yeah, you have these clients that are going through
Oh my
hell, and
gosh.
they're hitting all these, all these worst case scenario type things.
Yeah.
anyone's fault, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you're the one steering. You're the one that you're the quarterback.
Right, right. And they were like friends of friends. And it was getting to a point where my husband and I were like, you guys can move in with us for a little bit if you need to. Like, this is a bad situation because the Airbnb that they stayed at after the second mutual release, um, on like the second or third day, something happened with the sewer and it was like backing up into the house. And it was just like, I didn't know if they were going to make it. Like they
Oh my
were, I mean,
goodness.
these poor sweet friends were just like Murphy's Law. Everything
So
that can go
just go
wrong
back to
will.
your house and put a tent in the backyard and
I
make
know,
sure.
I know. You're like,
Gosh,
we'll find a spot for you.
yeah. Yeah, well, you mentioned Amy Spillman earlier. I know that her and her husband have had some luck with some rental properties,
Yeah.
and having those. And then there's just been like happenstance openings at some of these where they have clients who are in that spot, and they're like, "All right, just go over there and stay on our rental for a week or 2 weeks
Yeah.
while we get this settled." And
That's amazing.
it's been an interesting. They've had a lot of good timing. Yeah, because you got to have that. You want to have some long term renters and some short term, and they just had
Right.
some very coincidental openings that have worked
Yeah.
out. Uh,
That's
Talk
very
about like
fortuitous.
that's like a whole other level of service that you're
Right.
like here's some shelter for you for special
I'll
needs.
house you temporarily while we get this figured out. Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of what habits and routines do you have that you feel like has set you up for success? I know one thing for you is a you have a very pretty regimented schedule with like days on for real estate and days
Yes.
on for momming.
Uh-huh.
But go to talk about that and then talk about any other habits you have.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a 2.5-year-old and my husband works full time from home. I always feel like I work full time and I'm a full-time mom, which is like impossible, but that's what it
Moms
that's
do
what
the
it feels like.
impossible, so
Yeah. We have a close friend who is a nanny who watches Henry one day a week at her house, and my mother-in-law comes one day a week here to watch Henry. So I have 2 days a week that I'm in the office or doing meetings or showings, and I do showings other like nights and weekends too. Those fit in a little bit more organically, but like today is a day where he's going to our nanny friend's house this afternoon, while I have some meetings. So being really diligent about making sure I'm getting everything done on those 2 days. It's squeezing in a lot of work on 2 days a week. My husband's really supportive too. So if I need to go into the office or if there's like an event, an open house, or brokers open or something, he's really supportive. And then weekends too, doing open houses and things like that. But I'm
shout out to Eric.
really,
Great
I
husband
know.
part. Said shout
Thanks,
out to
Eric.
Eric. Great husband partner.
Eric Carmichael's the best. Um, we have like a family calendar just in our kitchen, and staying on top of that is really helpful. And then just like managing my own personal calendar. I pull a Leslie Knope and I love to jam on my planner. Uh, so keeping all of those things going, I have like a calendar in my phone, my like hard copy calendar or like planner, and then our family calendar, and I'm constantly like making sure they're all synced up.
Aligning. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I try to like in the evenings before we start winding down, look ahead to the next day and see like what's going on. And then in the mornings, like getting some coffee, working through emails and what's coming up. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Jam on my planner. Yeah,
Jamming on my planner.
yeah. But still, like the family calendar's like on the wall, pen and paper or marker or whatever. Like you
Yeah.
have it. Like wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like magnet on the side of our fridge and everything goes on there. So like closings, inspection. My husband is a musician, so he has gigs and those go on there. Family doctor appointments, vet appointments, because of course we have too many animals.
Right. So you
Like
say
not
side of the
enough
fridge. It sounds
chaos.
like it's the entire side of the fridge. You got to have a lot of
Yeah.
room in your boxes
I'll
for.
send you
I
a
mean, like is
picture
this
of
like
it
a 6 by
later.
6 or what?
Just like one of those desk
It's just a
calendars.
pool cover. We hung it up on the wall, and we yeah. Yeah.
It's a whole wall. That would actually be really helpful if it was like a chalkboard wall
Yes.
calendar.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
might
But
do
then
that.
Henry would probably draw on that a lot,
Yeah.
interference. So yeah.
Yeah.
Lace and I did a long time ago. We synced our iPhone calendars, so we have like family events, and then I kind of do the same thing. I have to align my Outlook calendar with the phone calendar.
Yeah.
So it's not pen and paper, but it gets us through the week. And you gotta
Yeah.
have an idea. We do the same thing at the night before or early evening. What's coming up tomorrow? What
Yeah.
we mentally preparing for, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. It just having kids, no matter what your job is, if you're like, if you add a child, or in your case, three, to the mix, it's just such an added level, like just another level of coordination.
yes,
It's
yeah.
wild.
You have to
Yeah.
think. It's like you're thinking ahead for three people instead of one, or five
Uh-huh.
people instead of one.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why there's
Yeah.
nothing
It's a
left up
lot.
here. It's all gone. What would you say are your primary sources of business or referrals? Where are those coming from?
Yeah. Friends and family, folks I went to college with, old coworkers, things like that. I've always been really relationally focused, like wanting to build lasting connections. So uh, I would say the bulk of my business has just come from people I've known, honestly, like and worked with in different settings. And yeah, I just
Right.
had
You're up
coffee
there
with a
teaching at the college, and you're like, and also when you're ready to buy a house,
and also, I know
the
I
syllabus,
do.
you'll see my business card stapled.
All of my students went to graduate.
That's right. That's right. You gotta live somewhere.
Hit
Come
me
on.
up. I know. Yeah.
You want this A? You want this A? Great.
And I try not to be that person in every like environment that I'm in that's like, well, I'm a realtor.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's so. I mean, all the you can go to just about any networking. No networking class is ever going to be like, make sure you state your career in every
Yeah.
conversation you ever have. It's like it's not meant to be
Yeah.
like it's relational. It's about making all
Yeah,
those
exactly.
connections first.
Yeah.
I joke with my boss when I go out for lunch with people. I'm like, I have to remember to talk about elements. Like I'm just talking about life and
Yeah.
pop culture and music, and there's
Uh-huh.
everything else to come up. It's like that's like I go, oh shoot, I got to give you the 30-second spiel at the end so I can write this lunch off. And I have to
Yeah,
be
exactly.
there for it. Yeah, yeah. So I knew we were like-minded in that way already, but yeah,
Yeah.
relationally, that's and so many. I think to build that book of business, that's what realtors are looking for. They want those. You have
Right.
to establish that connection to count on the repeat business in
Hmm.
the future and the word of mouth
Hmm.
referrals.
Yeah.
You
And
can
there
train.
is like a level of putting yourself out there, like specifically professionally in that way. Like, but if you do ever have any questions, like I just had a lunch with an old coworker of mine, um, and he's doing some staging stuff. So he was like, if you ever have any clients that need help, and I was like, well, likewise, if you or any of your folks. So it came up organically, but yeah, you're right. Like there is an element of like, I just want to make sure I'm like offering my services. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't ever want it to be like in a gross way, like
We don't want to be
gross
gross.
salesy. But
Yeah.
like really, if people do have questions, or if they want to know more, or if, you know what I mean? Like I am here to help
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
So figuring out how to like convey that in a way that doesn't feel like smarmy.
Sure. Smarmy. That's a great word. You got like $10 words today. I imagine some of that is what led you to teaching too. I mean, just the
Yeah,
desire to educate and to be a resource and
yeah,
to help people learn and not
absolutely.
they're coming to, well, in the school setting, it's a little bit more not enforced, but
Yeah.
someone has to have a class checked off
Uh-huh.
their transcript at some point. But yeah, it's that teacher heart is
Mhm.
that's a big help, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What do you do? How do you market? What do you do for marketing your business? How do you market your service? I mean, we talk about you're obviously we're not doing it in the conversation in a
Yeah.
smarmy way. We're doing it
It's not in a
smarmy.
smarmy way. Um, I do marketing on social media. That's also like I feel like that's always going to be a growth area. Like you could always do more. Um, so I do marketing on social media. I send out, oh, I should have brought it up here. I have really cute like monthly mailer postcards that I send out maybe every other month because I also don't want it to be like overwhelming or just like, ugh, another piece of mail from Rachel. I want it to like have value. So I'm like pretty discerning about which ones I send out and which ones I don't send out because I'm like, this is just crap and I would throw it away. Uh, no, no offense to any marketing that's ever done. It's all so great.
Yes, yeah,
No,
yeah.
but
We
like,
never throw away anything. I keep every
yes,
postcard I get from a realtor and cherish it in my scrapbook, of
exactly.
course.
No, but there are some like we just had one that was like all of the farmers markets, and I was like, oh, this is really cute and helpful. So I try to focus on things that are helpful and are providing value or education or something in some way. If it's like a direct mailer. Um, and then I try to be involved in community things. As a mom, I try to do stuff with my child and get involved in that way and meet people in a like non-threatening networking situation that way. Or as like a just individual person. So I'm in a ceramics class and meeting people through that and just want to again in like a not aggressive way be like if you ever want to talk about real estate, I'm here. Also, like,
You're in
let's.
ceramics, making little ceramic houses, little
Yeah,
ceramic keys. Like, oh, you noticed that
for my client.
No, that's
Yeah.
what about social media? What's your take on do you use social media for marketing, self-marketing?
Yeah. Um, I would like to be more involved in like the TikTok sphere, which makes me feel like too old and weird at the same time. Like how hard do I want to go on TikTok?
Yeah, how do you do, fellow kids? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but I try to post like educational things on Instagram and Facebook that are talking about our current like Indianapolis, Marion County or surrounding area markets. So I'm not just like, hey, I helped people sell a house. I'm like, if you're thinking about it, here's some material for you to consider. So I like to do those sorts of things too.
Nice. Yeah. You kind
Yeah.
of have to the way you mentioned earlier with postcards or not sending. You don't necessarily, I mean, things you don't want something to just get thrown away. You don't
Right.
want to be so over the top or so communicative that people don't want to hear from you.
Yeah.
And you also want to stay top of mind. You can't be too far in
Yeah.
the background, So
Uh-huh.
some of that goes back to having those relationships that outlast the
Exactly.
transaction.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
something personally on the lending side. I have a lot. I made a lot stronger efforts the last year and a half or 2 years of staying in
Hmm.
touch with buyer. Once the transaction's
Yeah.
over, I don't have a specific need to talk to the buyers ever
Sure.
again.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that their house is, how's the house? Have you done it? Have
Yeah.
you
How are
finished all
things
the
going?
painting? Have you hung the pictures
Hmm.
up? And 9 months later, I send them a home maintenance checklist. Here's some things that
Uh-huh.
you might want to think about putting on a to-do list if you haven't, things to stay top. You have to stay top of mind. Even on
Yeah.
social media, it's like I could post 16 times a day, but if people unfollow me, they're never going to see this
Right.
again. It's like you kind of have to
Yeah.
be relevant and be top of mind without being crushing their brain.
Over the top. It does feel like a fine balance sometimes. And then I also want to be like a human person, right? Like I'm not just like a real estate robot. Like,
John, yeah.
yeah, yeah, like I have a life outside of this or that's woven in here too. Yeah.
Right. Right. Oops, hit the camera. Um, what advice would you have for a new realtor joining the industry?
Ask every question you can. If you think it's dumb, it's not dumb. Ask every question. Be the most informed person in the room. Um,
Teacher. I
yeah.
hear, I hear a teacher in there. Ask all the questions. There are the
Ask all
dumb
the
questions.
questions. Seriously, I mean, even now, I say even now, it's only been a year and a half. Like, I have questions all the time. And if you don't ask them, you could make a big mistake with
Right.
someone else's home.
Yes.
So I just don't let like feeling nervous or prideful or anything get in the way of like doing what's right for your business and what's right for your clients. I also think communication is like the best thing that you can do. Communication with other realtors goes a really, really, really long way when you are trying to build a relationship around a transaction. You want to be a person that people want to work with.
Yeah,
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 and
that's
communication
great.
is a key component of that, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
it's that's I think it's huge. I think it always comes up in lists for what realtors want from their lender partners is
Mhm.
communication and transparency.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it used to be something I didn't really, I wouldn't say I self-promoted. I wouldn't feel like I didn't ever felt the need to pitch it. If I was talking to realtors, like, oh,
Sure.
I text and I answer my
I
phone.
communicate.
But it's like, but you mean when you realize how few people do it, it's like, oh, it really
Seriously.
is a standing out thing.
Well, and I think I even took that for granted. I had a transaction within the last year and a half where the lender that we were working with, I was representing the buyers. The lender that we were working with would not respond to us. And we had, it was like pretty time sensitive. And I was like, she's just straight up ghosting me. I don't know what is happening right now, but
To
like,
drive to this office and knock on this door.
yeah, we need answers to these questions like 2 days ago. Like, what is happening? And so I would send texts and even phone calls like, hey, are you going to be around this weekend in case we have questions? And she was always like, yeah, I'll be around. Like, I work all the time, just like you. And then I'd send her questions over the weekend and it'd be like, I'm not a like I will not shy away from over communicating. So it was like question, 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 question for me, and then just like radio silence.
Oh boy.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate how much you communicate,
Oh, thank
and
you.
it's like such a big part of all of the working relationships with the clients, with the other agents, with the lenders, with the title company.
Title. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
love that. Well, then going back, asking all the questions, that's something. Oh man, I have again. I love meeting with new realtors, and one of the things I try and drive home in the early meetings, you don't know everything, and it's okay that you don't know everything because nobody does. And
Mhm.
you're under pressure. You want to get. I know you want every client to be a closed deal, to be a lifelong relationship. But if you tell these people something wrong,
Yeah.
and then you pass them along and now someone else has to walk, if they you tell them something you think is true about lending and it's not,
Mhm.
and now I have to walk that back and still make you look
Yeah.
like an expert and still make you look like a quarterback, but it's put me, it's like kind of stay in your lane a little bit, but
Yeah.
also I've never had anyone tell me, well, let's back it up. I've never said, I don't know, let me check on that, I'll get back to you. I've never had anyone respond to that with, you are an idiot, I can't believe you don't know that,
What
how
do you
dare you
mean
not
you
answer
don't
my question
know?
immediately. It's like, no, that's not how people react. So
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
being willing to say I don't know, let me find out for you. You're not leaving. It's not like I don't know. It's not like you when you go to the grocery
Right.
store and you ask the part timer, "Where's this?" I don't know. Well, of the two of us, who is in a better position to find out where that is?
Absolutely. I know. I don't know.
Uh,
You're on your own.
There's a whole other conversation. I'm going to be grumpy old man talking about part
Yeah.
timers. Um, what opportunities do you feel like people in the real estate industry should be taking advantage of today? What opportunities should realtors be taking advantage of today?
That's a great question. Um, Again, I think just building relationships. I think that, things
She's doubling
things
down,
are
people. She's doubling
yeah.
down on the building relationships.
Things are up and down in here and there. But I think if you want like a good foundation to your business. It's about building relationships with people. It's not necessarily about having as many transactions as you can, because if they're not in the position to buy right now, they will be at some point, and you want to be the person they call. So just because they're not available for what your need is in that moment doesn't mean it's not a relationship worth pursuing. You
Awesome.
want to be everybody's go-to person.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You want to be the mayor, the digital mayor of your town is what people talk about. Social media is like you want to be
Yeah.
the go-to person. You want to be the digital mayor. You want to be the one that
Hmm.
people can
That's
funnel
good. I
to.
like that. I
That's
haven't heard
awesome. So this might be the same thing, but what's the best piece of advice you've ever received as in the specifically in the context of being a realtor? What's the best piece of
Yeah.
advice you've been given?
Call the agent, the listing agent before you put in an offer and text them when you put in the offer.
Again, things I would think were just the things you do. It's
Oh
like step one.
no.
Call.
I've had people call me, and I guess at least they did it on listings I've had that have said, like, I don't really like talking on the phone, but I told my clients I would call you. So I'm calling to let you know that they're interested. And I was like, I guess, like, kudos to you for picking up the phone, but
Wow,
also, like,
that's one way to
you
slide into the
are,
DMs. Yeah,
you're your client's advocate too. Like, you're building a relationship on their behalf as well. And, like, you want to put a good foot forward for all of you. Um, yeah, and then I've had people just like submit offers on listings without ever communicating with me that like even for our house when we got some offers for our personal home that we were selling, people put some weird stuff in there that I was like, why wouldn't you ask me like what we were looking for in an offer? Because it was a competitive situation. We had multiple offers. It went over list. And I think like calling and saying like, "Hey, what's your client looking for in an offer?" goes a really long way because maybe they want an extended close but didn't put that in the agent remarks, or maybe they want possession after closing. You know what I mean?
right.
So I think like asking those questions is really important and crafting like a really solid competitive offer.
You heard it here. Back to
In
basics.
my opinion.
Right, right. But I mean, well, you can't argue with success, Rach. So.
I'm not the expert. I just I
Well,
tried my best.
we all stand on the shoulders of giants, right? So that it goes back to asking questions is like there is no shame in that.
Yeah.
And you know, I've been lending for 6 years, and I still have questions very frequently. Shout
Yeah.
out to Carla Chevry, my upline, who I
Yeah.
talk to several times a week, and sometimes it's just to confirm. I think I know it's
Yeah.
this. I just want someone to affirm it before I
Yeah.
pass that along.
Well, no transaction is the same either. So
No, yeah,
each transaction is a different situation with a different set of circumstances, and it's impossible to know every single thing.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All right. We got two last, respecting the time we got, I got two last
Okay.
questions for you. We're going to go low and then go high. So, what would be give us an example of a failure you've experienced in your time as a realtor, and what did you learn from that? So, I know
Um,
I mean, you're already very open and vulnerable, so this isn't like a
yeah.
question
My
level,
failures.
but I don't
Um,
experience those actually.
yeah. I've never had one.
Not familiar with that sensation.
No, I'm very familiar. So I think back to like the mutual release for those clients that time that they were looking, and I know that like we couldn't have done much about that. And I know that I asked the questions like at the onset, like, is he going to do any repairs? And he was like, yeah. Um, I got very emotionally invested in that specific part of their whole journey and was like, just really internally emotionally reactive about how that transaction went and the communication with the other agent and the seller, who I still think is a weenie. Um, yeah, and so like I I remember thinking about that like after the fact and just like, oh man, I got like really mad about that. I got like really upset about that. And I think for myself, I need to take a little bit of a step back too and have some boundaries with it because things are going to happen and be crazy. And I think it's good to have a level of emotional investment, right? Like you're tied into your clients. But I took on a lot of the emotional weight of that situation.
You're in too deep.
Like, yeah, very frustrated about it. And I was like, yeah, I just wasn't um my best self to myself, like talking to myself and talking to my husband about it. I wasn't like yelling at the other agent or anything, but um I just remember thinking like, okay, I need to like take a step back and things are going to happen and go sideways sometimes, and we're just going to do the best we can. So yeah, learning how to have like good emotional boundaries with transactions too, and not being like so um discouraged if I mean sometimes things just don't work out and sometimes they're not meant to work out, but I don't need to be like self-deprecating either, like, oh, I failed them and I didn't,
Yeah, can't take it too personal, right?
Yes.
Too
Yeah.
personally,
So
right? Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah,
I
that's
care too much. That's my failure.
that's right. I'm a perfectionist. What's your greatest weakness, right? The classic guff off question in the interview. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I just try too hard. I care
I
too
work
much.
too hard.
I work too.
That's not what I meant to do.
No, it's great. No, it is. No, that's great. I mean, it is taking it too personal. I mean, there were realtors who
Yeah.
didn't know how to extricate themselves, and we've had a
Yeah.
while. I mean, we could talk. We could have a whole other separate webinar about the mental health crisis of the country and how people are just
Yeah.
not addressing their own brain needs and emotional
Right.
intelligence. And
Yeah.
you see
And I
it.
can't like get dysregulated every time something doesn't go perfectly. You know what I mean? It's like my job to take care of myself, to be good for myself and my family first and foremost, and
Yeah.
my clients. And I can't come home from a wonky transaction and be like, "Rah!" like raging in front of my 2-year-old.
Oh my goodness. Judicious, smarmy, dysregulated, wonky. I'm like one word away from kick-ass word bingo here. I love the vocabulary that's going on. Uh, I say wonky all
Oh,
the time.
thanks.
Okay, the high note now. Another humble brag minus the humble. What's been your proudest accomplishment so far in
Mm.
your industry, in your time as a realtor? Because obviously Henry's here, and we know he's your accomplishment. The kids are great.
Yeah.
Yada yada.
Balancing it with him. I think, okay, so the $1 million month was a huge one. On one of my first days in the office, one of the other agents in the office was talking about how he just had $1 million month. And I was like, what? Like it blew my mind. And I was like, I'll never
$1 million.
get there. And he was like, you will someday. And so like from that point, I've been like, I will have $1 million month. Like really working towards it in sort of a crazy way. And
Scribbling
also,
eyeballs and mustaches on his face. Like,
yeah, I will have it. And May was crazy too. Like it was 4 transactions. They were all wonky. And one of them closed in the afternoon on the 31st. And it was like, I may not make it, and that's fine. But if we do close, that'll be awesome. Um, but that was really great. I have surpassed my sales volume from last year, currently, which was my goal for the whole year, just to surpass it. So I've met my 2023 goal in June,
check it
which
out
feels
now.
really good.
You can
Yeah, I
sign
know.
off. We'll be seeing
Done.
you in January.
Going on vacation. So
Wow.
that's been really cool. Yeah. So like year to date, I've sold 5.3 million from June 2022 to now,
Okay.
which is like I'm pretty proud of that. Um, yeah, so just going from there. And then I think the other one, when really close friends ask me to help them with real estate, it feels like a really special moment. To be seen as like a professional in that way from people who have seen you like maybe also not at your best.
Okay, puking at Bonnaroo. Yeah.
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 Like
Oh,
I
you want
did
me
a
to
good
come
job
to
for
my house?
you.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Glad
You hold my
that
hair
other
back
memory
and
didn't
forth.
imprint clearly.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's great. Well, people take it one of two ways. It's either I want all my family and friend referrals, or I do
Yeah.
not want to cross
Yeah.
that boundary. And we've talked about it. There's every deal's different, and every deal has
Yeah.
some things, hiccups and turbulence, and
Yeah.
sometimes those relationships weather those things, and I think other times I think
Hmm.
they're afraid that the relationship won't survive.
Yeah. And I mean, it's an incredible trust component that goes into that. And so I think feeling, again, not trying to take it personally, but I've like, I feel honored that would, that they do trust me to help with that. Yeah. So feels like a big win.
That's very congruent with what I know to be true about Rachel Carmichael. So that makes sense. Thanks for sharing that. So, and if you're a friend or a family of Rachel watching this video, that's who you talk to over there,
Thank
Rachel.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. Where can we find you, learn more about you, reach out to you?
Yeah.
Where are you at?
Carmichael-realestate.com. Rachel double underscore Carmichael on Instagram. Rachel Carmichael on TikTok or on Facebook.
Yeah.
It's like, what is that other one?
Yeah.
And then Carmichael Real Estate on TikTok. The TikToks are like, we're building it up, but don't
Sure.
have super high expectations. It's like some
You're
home
not
tours
you're
and
not
then videos
viral.
of my kid. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, you're a braver man than I for getting in the TikTok stuff. That's we'll
I'm
see.
not doing any dances or anything.
No, I'm trying
So
to.
again, keep expectations real low.
Right. Right. Well, it's such the social media again. That's a whole other webinar. The ever-changing nature of that beast and how
Yeah.
algorithms, how they, and to know that the inventors of these things don't even let their own kids use. People who invented Instagram don't let their kids have smartphones or Instagram accounts, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
but it's also the world we live in, and you
Yeah.
read more and more about social proof and how the
Yep.
generations that are coming up. You hear a name, it's not just a word of mouth referral. They're googling this person and what is the
Absolutely.
this person has online. And if they can't find any, how good can this person be if they're not online
Right.
and not posting
Yeah.
their success? So it's a head trip, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wish
I
you the
mean,
best of luck on your TikToking.
thank you. I need
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for chatting and being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I wish you, I mean, well, I'm sure I look forward to seeing all the continued success of 2023, and
Thank
maybe
you.
maybe we double or triple what that goal you set for yourself was.
Maybe that would be great.
But yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
joining me.
Thanks
Great
for
chat.
having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, think very highly of you, and I appreciate your time. So
Well, likewise. Yeah.
yeah, have a great day, y'all. Thanks, everybody.